If you want to learn more about winter bird photography, you're in the right place. Today's guest is nature and wildlife photographer Diana McPherson. We're going to discuss winter bird photography in detail and review some of Diana's winter bird photos. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thanks, Kirby. Thanks for having me here.
My pleasure. So tell everybody about your wildlife photography, how you got started, and bring us up to date.
Well, I've always been interested in nature and wildlife. And I think that it started long ago when I was a kid. We would watch nature shows, kind of grew up on watching a lot of those nature shows and just playing outside a lot and just being exposed to a lot of wildlife and bringing some of that wildlife home and doing all kinds of stuff with that. And I think a lot of that had led to my education, pursuing degrees in biology and environmental education. And along the way, I had also wanted to delve into photography a bit more. I'd always been so intrigued with those shows, and then also with the books and magazines that I was reading. And I would go a little bit further than what the information had told me about the animals. I was looking at those images and always thought, how did they get those images? I want to do something like that. I want to be doing that. And, feeling like I was getting closer to the animals and learning a lot more. And so I had some opportunities when I was working in various positions. I did some photo ID research with dolphins. And then another position I held was I did field biology. And so I was able to monitor harbor seals. And then that's where I was starting to get introduced into birds. So I never really studied them in college, but working that position, I was also monitoring brown pelicans and then snowy plovers and least terns. And so I was learning a lot about those birds. And then I had experience doing marine mammal rescue and rehab. And so then people there kind of knew about that. And so then I ended up getting involved with bird rescue. And so that was kind of all of that was kind of a crash course, I think, into learning about birds. And so I wasn't really, I guess I was photographing a little bit of them, but I was getting more of an education, learning about bird species and how to how you are around them, how to approach, not approach them. And so then that's kind of what really, all of that experience is what really kind of started me in working more with photography and just being out in the field and doing research and doing trips oriented to do photography and different types, either with the birds or with wildlife and underwater. And then for a little bit, we were living in New Mexico when my kids were young. And so, I was staying at home and I did this, one of those spa home businesses. And I really, it wasn't for me. I just really didn't care for it. And so I put that aside. I got rid of that, and I still had this business license. And so I was like, what am I going to do with that? And there was an art show coming up at my kids' school. And so I made some prints, set up a table, and sold some prints. And so that was kind of my push towards continuing in photography. And then I had also been involved with the camera club, and they had introduced me to the sandhill cranes and the snow geese that winter over at the Bosque del Apache.
Sure.
And yeah, and so that was just, it was just fascinating. It's like, and that just really cinched, I think, the bird photography with me. And so I've been doing that pretty much ever since.
Okay. Great background. Boy, you've done a lot of different things. I noticed that when I was looking at your website. So you're a scuba diver and done all kinds of different research. So that's a great
Yeah.
background for photography. Most of us come at it from the other direction. We learn to photograph and then have to learn about the animals we want to photograph. Either way works.
Right.
So talking about winter photography, what's different about winter bird photography than other times of the year?
I think it's the variety of the weather conditions and the birds that you get. So currently I'm in Southeast Washington and we're in the Columbia Basin. We are, we have the Columbia River, the Yakima River, and the Snake River all coming together. And we are part of the Pacific Flyway as well. We're along the Pacific Flyway. And so we get a huge number of migratory birds. Some of them stop by for just a short time until they continue, or before they continue on south. And there's other species that stay here for the winter. So there's a wildlife refuge that's really close, and we get a really large flock of snow geese that stay there for the winter, and then they head back up to the tundra March, April. And then with the weather conditions, we get a lot of different conditions. So we can have clear days and freezing temperatures, snow, rain, fog, ice. I won't go out if it's icy just because it's too dangerous, but and a lot of those conditions can just give you a lot of different opportunity, different scenery, different different views for your images.
Yeah, we'll take a look at some of those images a little later on, but yeah, I think one of the things you need to understand at any time of the year with bird photography is migration. And I guess I grew up thinking that migration was one big thing, but the more you learn about it, there are different birds migrate at different times of the year and at different rates, and some go a long ways, some go short ways. So yeah, learning what migration patterns are in your areas, wherever you're photographing, is helpful, I think.
Oh, I know, and I'm still learning. I mean, we have the group of snow geese that come down. I figure from the tundra. There's another group, another huge flock of snow geese that are on the west side that I know of, over in I think it's Fur Island, so it's north of Seattle. And I think they stay there for the whole winter, but that's only coming down to Washington. But then there's the other group of snow geese that flies down to the Bosque down in southern New Mexico.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just really interesting to find out what where their breeding grounds are and how far they're traveling, and why do these birds only go as far as Washington, where we still get freezing temperatures, whereas the other ones go to New Mexico, although they still get freezing temperatures too. I've been out there when yeah, it's really, really cold.
Yeah, Bosque it's at altitude, so it can be pretty chilly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a group that stops over in southern Oregon in the Klamath Basin, and so they get there by the thousands too. And I don't know which part of the groups that you're talking about they're stopover for, but certainly get lots of them. I've spent a lot of time up there, and
yeah,
they're beautiful birds, and it's great fun photographing them.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're fun. I really like them too.
So how do you get ready for a winter bird shoot?
Well, I check on the weather conditions first. check, if how cold it's going to be, if it's going to be snowing or rainy, or how everything is going to be. The road conditions definitely, and then knowing where I want to go. And then checking the apps that are really helpful are like eBird and iNaturalist. And there's another one I use sometimes too. It's the Birds Near Me. And so those are apps that other birders have recorded their sightings. And so if I was looking for, because I know the snow geese are over at the refuge right now, and maybe there's some different birds I hadn't seen yet, I hadn't photographed. And so those are really good options to check to see what's in the area. But then it is really just really important to with the winter conditions, just to know kind of what you're getting into. So, and it might take a little bit more planning. If you're going to have really cold temperatures today, you're kind of clearing up in a couple of days, kind of work around that. But I love to go out when it is snowing. So when we have snowflakes falling, I grab my camera and I'm like, who's coming with me? Usually nobody. And so I just head out on my own. I feel kind of lucky in my area. I'm able to walk to a location just across our neighborhood is a wetland refuge, a nature preserve. And so I spend a lot of time over there. And so even when conditions aren't really nice, especially for driving, I know I can still walk over there. Sometimes I've snowshoed over there. We've had snow so bad, that's the only way I can get out of the house is on snowshoe. And, and so I just head over there. And then it's just also making sure that your gear is ready to go out for those conditions. Make sure you have extra batteries because the cold will zap the battery life a lot faster. And then also make sure that you let people know where you're going and when you plan to be back.
Sure.
And don't forget to take water and snacks with you. Even if you're out for just a couple hours, always take something with you. Because you never know if you get, you might get stuck someplace. And I always have like extra blankets. If I'm driving, I have blankets in the car. I've got a whole bunch of extra things in the car with me.
Yeah, all good ideas and good preparation.
Yeah, this takes a little extra planning, I think, for the winter, but absolutely doable.
So speaking of that, how do you dress for winter photography, depending on the temperature, of course?
Yeah, when it is really cold. And so my temperatures that I deal with really just go down to freezing. I know there are areas like in the Yellowstone and definitely up Alaska and Canada get below freezing. That I've not personally dealt with. So my temperature range, I suppose, is to freezing. So just so we know. But I kind of just dress like I'm going skiing. So base layer of thermals. And for pants, it kind of depends if I'm going to be just working from the car or if I'm going to go hiking. So if I'm just going to stay in the car, I'll just probably put on like tights over that. So I still have a couple layers because the windows are going to be down. And so it still gets really cold. So still have those layers. Usually wear use my ski socks and either my hiking boots or a pair of snow boots that I've got, hiking or snowshoes, snow boots. And then those work well with the actual snowshoes if I'm going to venture out that way. For the top, definitely a couple extra layers. You want to keep the core layered up and keep it warm. So the thermal base layer, and then I do another long sleeve. Sometimes I'll put just an extra t-shirt just so I have an extra layer over the core, not so much over the arms, but have like a longer sleeve and then a fleece a fleece jacket, and then another jacket. And part of that, I'll choose the jacket depending on the weather. So if it's snowy and I'm going to go snowshoeing, then I'll probably just wear my ski jacket. If I'm going someplace where it's where I'll be out for a bit and kind of standing around more, and then I have this kind of heavy jacket that I'll wear, and has these nice, great big pockets to put some extra things in, or a rain jacket if the weather calls for that. And then always wear my wool hat and my gloves, so I'm covered up.
Yeah, know that feeling. So what are your favorite gloves? That's always a perennial question with winter photography.
Yes, and I'm using the gloves that I wear are I think they're like a cold weather bike glove, and so they have the grips on the palm, and then I wear that one, and then I wear like a knit glove over those. So it's kind of a 2-layer glove. I don't have any of the designated cold weather photography gloves. That one just seems to work for me.
Okay.
Yeah, the knit glove has, the little cover that you can cover the fingers. And then I can just move that aside and still handle the camera really easily, because those little grips are on there on the bottom of the other gloves. And then if I'm not shooting, I just kind of cover my fingers and go from there.
Okay. So you have the kind that has that folds back the finger
Mhm.
portion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those will work well if it's not too cold.
Yeah.
Great. So do you use a blind at all when you're shooting or not?
I mentioned the car. So I think the car is my primary blind during the winter. And given where I'm at, a lot of the locations are really easy to drive up to, and you can just stay in the car and shoot from there. I can get right next to the river and just stay in the car. And that works really well. It doesn't disturb the birds. I think they're just kind of used to the sound of cars coming and going, and so that just doesn't disturb them. If I were to stop and open the door, birds are gone.
Right.
That'll get them. So if you just plan to stay in the car. So I usually, when I see something, and I'll kind of start to roll the windows down and make a slow approach, and then stop. And I don't, try to kind of not move too much, or really slowly when I'm getting my camera and getting set up to look out the window. There are some places that have built-in blinds, like the Wildlife Refuge has a really nice building that's set out just over the pond. And so I'll spend time out there. They have a lot of windows at different levels, and so you can have just a lot of different view options. And for, I guess, another blind I've used is just simply using a blanket to cover myself. And it wasn't for photographing birds. I was out in the snow photographing the black-tailed jackrabbits in the preserve, actually across the street. And so as soon as I saw the birds, the jackrabbits, then I'd set up my camp chair, put up the tripod, grab my blanket, kind of just cover myself a little bit, and then just sit there. So kind of covers a bit more.
Is that a camel blanket or just a regular old blanket?
Just a regular old blanket, a little fleece blanket that I had picked up, in one of these Christmas sales. It was kind of the white gray, so I felt that would kind of blend in a little nicer
Sure.
to the snow. So, and yeah, it seemed to work just fine.
Yeah, that shooting from your vehicle works well with some species and not at all with others. I've discovered over time. There's
Mhm.
some species that are so skittish that the moment you roll down your window, they're out of there.
Oh, right.
And yeah, and so it's always smart to roll it down before you get to whatever you want to photograph. But
Yeah, because I had that issue too. As soon as I had stopped the car and then I made that noise with the windows, it's like, oh, then they leave. I'm like, darn it. So,
yeah,
so yeah, just kind of think about, um, yeah, your movements and try not to disturb the animals. So
or scare them off when you're trying to take their picture.
I know.
So how do you keep your gear safe and dry in the winter? Do you anything special that you do, or
um, I just kind of, well, working from the car is pretty easy to keep it
sure?
dry. And if I'm out hiking or snowshoeing, it'll be in my backpack until I'm taking it out. And if it happens to be actually snowing or if it's raining, then I do have one of those inexpensive lens covers that I put over the camera. So even
Okay,
if it's a pretty light rain, I know a lot of the cameras, the newer ones it's really weather sealed, but I still would prefer to cover it.
sure. Got
So
a big investment there if you're like most of us.
yeah, a lot of electronics and very expensive. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what gear do you use? We didn't really talk about that.
I'm using a Canon 90D,
Okay.
and the lens I use primarily is the Tamron 150 to 600.
Okay.
And then sometimes the Tamron 18 to 400.
Okay.
So that one works a little better for if I'm out hiking. It's much smaller and much lighter.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
So how do you like that 150 to 600?
I like it. Yeah, I like the reach. I do notice when I'm trying to go to 600, yeah, I need to pull back just a little bit because that focus, like right at 600, is not super sharp.
Yeah, I had one for a while and I noticed that as well. So
Yeah, so
one of
kind
the,
of max out maybe 5 to 550,
yeah,
right in there.
it's one of the disadvantages of those long zooms
Mm-hmm.
or wide zoom range. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at your photos.
Oh, while you pull those up too, what I wanted to mention as well for being out in the wintry conditions and it's really, really cold out, when you're coming back to the house with your camera, make sure that you put the camera in a sealed bag. So either a Ziploc bag or a dry bag would work for the longer lenses. Because you want to let that camera warm up slowly. If you bring it in from the cold temperatures, especially freezing or even below, and you bring it into a cozy house, you run the risk of getting condensation on the camera or on the lens.
Always a challenge. So this looks like it's a hawk of some kind, but I'm not sure what kind. Is it a red tail?
No, this is a juvenile bald eagle.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we get a lot of those in this area. And then during the winter, their colors kind of blend in more with the branches. And he's also juvenile, so he doesn't have that white head just yet. He won't have
Right.
that until he's about 5 years old.
Yeah.
But they blend in, and I put this one in because they camouflage themselves so well with their surroundings, and then trying to shoot to shoot them through the trees or the branches. With the autofocus, just does not work. I've tried autofocus and I get that focus on the bird branch, back and forth, and it won't lock on either one. And so definitely have to switch to manual setting in order to get the focus where I want it. But a lot of times that's how you're going to find the birds, is kind of hiding and camouflaged within the trees.
Yeah, they like to do that, particularly owls, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. And this one I put in, so this is another juvenile bald eagle. You can tell that he's a little bit older because he's starting to get the white on his head, and his beak's a little bit more yellow.
Right.
And so I was watching him, and he started making these this weird movement. And so I'm like, gosh, what's going on with him? And so I just started shooting. And then it turned out, you can see in his mouth, or in his beak, sorry, that he is he's regurgitating a pellet. And I had no idea that eagles or hawks did this. I knew, of course, owls do that,
Right.
but I didn't know that the other raptors did that. So that was why I had to look that up when I got home. What on earth was he doing? And so it's just learning, watching the birds and seeing what they're doing, and just spending some time with them, and you just kind of learn a lot of different things every time. It's always, kind of like you learn something new every day. So,
yeah, I've discovered that as well. The more you're in the field, the more you learn about bird behavior if you're paying attention.
Oh yeah, and then being patient too. So I had one time I was watching a great blue heron, and it was I think in the springtime, and he was perched, and I was kind of sitting back, just watching him, waiting for him to do whatever he wanted to do. And someone else had come by and, oh, what are you looking at? And pointed out the great blue heron, and looked at it for a second. Oh, but he's not doing anything. Like, sure he is. He's perched. That's what he does. And this person turned around and walked off. And in that process of walking off, stepped on a branch that snapped, which startled the great blue heron. And so then the great blue heron flew off. So I was watching, I got photos of him flying off, but then this person who wanted to see the bird do something totally missed it, because then just had her back to the bird. So, but I think just being patient with the birds is a definite requirement for
Yeah, I agree.
watching their behavior.
Speaking of great blue herons.
Yeah. So this one is at Bear River Migratory Bird Wildlife Refuge.
Northern Utah.
Northern Utah, over along the Salt Lake. And so most of the pond is frozen, and there's this little stream that's going by, and there must have been about, I'd say 60 great blue herons out in this area. And so they were catching fish. There were some gulls that had come by. There were a few different waterfowl that were there as well. But I was just really surprised to see so many great blue herons there together. So because they don't seem to stay in our area during the winter, I don't see them. And so I kind of thought that maybe they went further south. I'd seen them at the Bosque.
Right.
And I didn't, so I don't know like what their migration pattern is. But so I think I was just a little surprised to find so many of them just down in Utah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a migratory stopover for great blue herons. They certainly aren't staying in our area in the winter. And we're in northwest Nevada. So Our
Yeah.
winters are still pretty mild, but and there's a nice rookery not too far away, but they clear out by
Mhm.
early fall, even it seems like.
Oh, yeah. And so this is the pair of blackneck stilts. And this is down in Arizona, in Gilbert, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. And so a lot of birds will migrate to that area. There's this really nice, it's a man-made riparian wetland area, but they built it up so that they do attract a lot of birds, and there are a lot of species that go there. So, but then just watching them, all the different birds, you can see all these different behaviors, and so this pair is courting.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of looks like courting behavior. I was just reading about that Gilbert location the other day, and we're headed to Phoenix in a couple months. So sounds
Um,
like I should add that to my list, huh?
oh, absolutely.
When's a good time to be there? Do you know?
Well, this was in February.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I definitely would say February, probably January as well, but February is a really good time.
Oh,
So
perfect. That's when we're going to be in the area. So
that'd be great.
I love this picture. This is great.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, this is the burrowing owl, and this is also in the Gilbert area, just outside of the riparian park there. And it's another park just down the highway. And in February. And so they were getting rain. Seemed to me a little unusual to have so much rain at that time, but it had started raining over at the riparian park, and then I had moved over to this one, and I got there just before the rain had started. There's a walkway that takes you through the park, and just off of the walkway, maybe 10 to 12 feet, are all the burrowing owl burrows. They're all man-made burrows. And so this is an area that has been put in place for to replace to relocate burrowing owls. So when they come across a field that, hey, we have plans to develop this. Oh, but we found burrowing owls. So they'll take the owls and they'll relocate them to another location. And so this is one of those relocation areas. And so that's what he's standing on, one of the signs, the markers for the burrows, because they have people who come by to monitor the species.
Sure.
So
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So I was able to sit pretty close. I thought we were like a little bit too close. It's like, isn't this going to bother them? But I guess they're kind of accustomed to people being like right there. But I stayed on the path and just put up my my camp chair and my tripod and had my umbrella ready, since the rain was headed in. And so I just held up my umbrella, and I thought when the rain had started that he was going to fly off, and he kind of turned around and spread his wings, and I thought for sure, oh, he's just going to go. And so I was snapping a bunch of photos, and he started just kind of shaking around and fluffing his feathers, and he did that for quite a while. He didn't go anywhere. He just stayed there through the rain. And so I found out later that they like the rain. That's how they take a bath basically in the rain. So when they don't have rain, you might see them kind of fluffing around in the dirt, and that's to help keep some of the parasites off of them. And then when they get that chance rain, they'll do the same thing, just kind of fluff out and rinse off any little bugs that might be bothering them, so that they keep their feathers nice and clean.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with burrowing owls. I've seen them a couple of times, but they seem to be remarkably tolerant of people. So even in fairly remote locations. So some species are and some aren't, I guess.
Yeah, and these seem really tolerant to everything around them, because just behind me from the parking area was the highway, and then the brown background here is the field, and then the lighter part are from the headlights
Oh,
from the road that's surrounding that field.
great job of getting the background out of focus and leaving the focus on the bird.
And this is just one of those other weather conditions that you can happen upon. So this is in Washington, over in Rockport, in the Skagit Valley.
Oh,
And so this is an area that the bald eagles congregate at during the winter, because they're following the fish.
sure.
And the salmon. And then and it gets, at least when I was there, it was early December, a couple of years ago, and they were just socked in with fog. And we were out, I did one of the little boat tours, and that's what we had to start with. And it did eventually clear out a little bit, so we were able to get some different shots. But sometimes that's what you have, so just kind of work with what you've got.
Making lemonade, huh?
Yeah.
So amongst your other activities, you've written an ebook about winter bird photography. Where can people find that? How much does it cost? And tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. There's a link on my website, friendsinnature.com. That'll take you to the link for the ebook, and it's $9.99. And I go into more of what we've discussed with what you can find, how to find it, how to dress, a lot of suggestions on some gear, and then also some photography settings. So dealing with low light conditions, fog, and if you want fog, how to find, how to predict that you may have fog. Maybe not so socked in like that, but like getting that fog effect coming off of a water source. Yeah, different options for the blinds and
Lots of beautiful pictures.
lots of photos. Yes.
Okay. Well, worth it.
And also how to photograph birds during the winter from your house too. So a lot of times maybe people don't want to go out anywhere, but setting up bird feeders is also a great way to experience the birds. And if you want getting started with bird photography, I think that's really great way to set up.
Sure.
And get started.
Well, thanks for being on the Photographing the West podcast, Diana. Where can people find you and everything you do? You mentioned your website is Friends in Nature, I guess, huh?
Yep, friendsinnature.com. And then I'm also on Facebook as Fin Images, so FIN Images, and Instagram and Twitter as Fin_Images. Facebook wouldn't let me do the underscore in there, so.
Okay. I just made a note so I can put those in the show notes along with your website and everything. So each episode of the Photographing the West podcast is published on the 15th and 30th of the month. If you enjoy these podcasts, please take a moment to subscribe wherever you watch or listen. If you'd like to support these podcasts, please use any of the affiliate links in the show notes whenever you buy camera gear or outdoor gear. Doesn't cost you anything and generates a small amount of money for me to keep the show going. Bye for now, and we'll be back on January 15th, 2022 with the first episode of season 6 of the Photographing the West podcast. Bye for now.